The retail trade shows, that's what really took off our kits. We were a bit afraid to dive in. Those can get quite expensive and we were hesitant. So my sister had been doing them for years with her jewelry booth. So she said, okay, well, why don't you just set up a shelf in my booth and let's test it out. So we did, but the only problem with that is our shelf was so busy, no one could see her jewelry. Like, it was tragic and funny at the same time. We laugh about it now because that was the show that was, okay, this is fun. This was a blast. Let's try a big one on our own with our own booth.
Welcome to Side Hustle Hero, the show that is laser focused to inspire you to take action to start or to scale your side hustle income streams. I'm your host, Joan Posivy, author of The Way Success Works. If you're enjoying what you're hearing in this podcast, I'd be so grateful if you would take a moment and leave a 5-star review at the platform where you're listening to let others know that there's valuable content here to help them start or grow their side hustle. Thank you so much. I discovered Rubble Road Soapstone carving kits at a retail trade show. Just as the name suggests, they are kits containing a soapstone cutout with everything that you need to carve your own soapstone treasure. Once I discovered that for the first 2 years, this was a side hustle for Jennifer Cornelius and David Swojanovski, I had to learn more. They've gone from selling about 30 of these soapstone pieces a month to selling thousands per month. Where once the saw that cuts these silhouette pieces ran just 4 hours a week, now it needs to run at least 12 hours a day. In addition to selling retail, a growing segment of their business is bringing these kits into schools and teaching students how to carve and work with soapstone. They can teach in person in the classroom, but they can also teach remotely, which is opening up so many more markets for them. Is developing a business teaching students and adults soapstone carving using these kits something you'd be interested in doing as a side hustle? Then reach out to Jennifer and David. But first, for inspiration in whatever your current or future side hustle might be, check out this episode with the founders of Rubble Road. Well, welcome, Jennifer, David.
Thanks for having us.
When we met Jennifer, it was at a Christmas market featuring over 250 artisans at the Vancouver Convention Center. And I came across your booth, loved the idea of the product line that you were selling, and learned that together you had started this as a side hustle. Yay. How did you two become stone carvers in the first place?
I grew up in the industry. My grandfather was a wood carver and he loved hobbies all in that same area. So he started a store called Bedrock Supply. So I grew up watching stone and wood carvers come from all over and he would enter competitions. So I just grew up in it, not realizing that I would make a whole career out of it, but it just was a total accident. But David's a little different.
Yeah, I got started in Ontario with rock. As a teenager, I grew up in the mineral capital of Canada in Bancroft, Ontario. I did some quarry work in a granite quarry out there. So I started with bigger stone. Right. Moved out to Alberta, did some exterior stone work in the winter, realized that during the winter time, I don't want to work outside
no,
in Alberta.
Especially in Alberta, yeah.
Yeah. Ended up getting a job at Bedrock, and it was a salesman. And I got into the gem sales here. There was a gentleman cutting gems for jewelers here at the store at the time by the name of John Shire, and I was a fly on the wall with that gentleman every day.
Nice.
Asked him all the questions I could think of. He answered them all. It was great wealth of information for me at that time for a really hard stone.
So tell me how the two of you connected there.
Well, we actually met about 6 months before he started working here.
Oh, okay.
Through mutual friends. And then we started dating, and then we hired him at the store because of his love for rocks. And then I came on full time at the same time. We both started working here because Bedrock had made a big move to a bigger building. So we needed more staff. And I figured it was finally time to join the family. And then he was hired at the same time because we needed someone who had a really strong gem knowledge to sell our gemstones. So we've been working together and together as a couple for 20 years now. So
it's crazy.
Yeah.
Well, you were in sales, David. I know time flies, right?
Yeah, it does.
What was your role at the store, Jennifer, or at the business?
I am manager, basically, kind of just jumped right in. My mother was running it at the time. And so she just threw my sister and I in there. So we just started running the floor, receiving inventory, handling the staff, making sales, anything that needed to be done. So just all in manager type role.
Nice. Well, that's probably part of the secret of your perfect partnership then when it came to the side hustle.
Yeah.
How did the side hustle come about?
This is a small family business, Bedrock Supply, and we have 5 family members here. So, with a small family business, we're not a huge corporation. There's only so much money to go around. And so David and I, we're at this point in our life, we want to travel and stuff. We really want to make more money. And so our boss, Kathy, she said, well, figure out how to make something and make some more money. You have to make your own money. There's no more money to spread out. So you have to come up with something on the side. So like, well, okay, what do we do? We're surrounded in products that teach you how to make things, right? Silversmithing, beading, carving supplies. We both loved rocks. And my great uncle at the time was cutting about 6 shapes, going into the local school system in Sherwood Park and teaching them.
Okay.
And he was getting up there in age, and he had beat cancer a couple times. And he's like, I just can't do this anymore.
Yeah.
Do you guys want to take it over? And at first we were like, well, I don't know if that's what we're looking for. And my mom, our boss, was like, no, just try it. I think you guys will like it. So we did. And like the rest is history. We did our first couple classes, totally newbies. Like we had never taught stone carving before. We both filleted and carved with stone, but we just jumped fully in on the side while working full time. And then we were kind of half in for about 2 years, just teaching. Yeah. And then we thought, okay, well, lots of parent volunteers. They said, how do I buy one of these to take home to my other son or daughter? Or, my dad would really like to try this, or my father or my grandfather.
Or the kids wanted to do another one as well, all right?
Yeah. So walk us through what that looks like for our listeners who don't know the business at all.
We bring them a pre-existing silhouette of a piece of stone.
Okay.
And we bring the sandpapers provided. So we do some shaping on there. We teach them how to create depth on a piece of rock. I talk about the geology of the stone in the class as well.
Nice.
How soapstone carving compares to other harder stone and even wood carving as well. And some of the different tricks and tips for different methods of working with this rock as well.
Right.
So in that class, we're going to shape it. We're going to learn how, even though they're putting scratches on a rock, it doesn't matter because you actually have to put some texture on there and scratch it up just to be able to shape it.
Okay.
We have some fun just kind of creating our own simple patterns on there, whether it's realistic or stylized, that's up to the student themselves. They just get to have their own fun and be inventive in their own way.
Yeah. And I would imagine the age too would determine how intricate it's going to get. So how long would that take the student to do?
We've got it down to about an hour and a half in a class right now. Got it down pat pretty good for the size that we offer. For the younger groups, for older groups, we have larger pieces of stone that they can take. And if they have more time allotted to them for that art class, they can definitely take more time and complete larger pieces as well.
But still, it's a pretty small amount of time, and the student gets to end up with pretty sweet, what would you call it?
It's a pretty fun stone sculpture that they get by the end, and it's something to get to personalize, right? And it's a lasting art as well. It's not something that's going to deteriorate on their shelf over time also, right? So
right. And
I like about it too.
And it was those kits that you were selling at the trade shows.
Yeah, we didn't have the kits yet when we first started. It took us about 2 years to realize that, lots of people are really interested in this. And so we took those 6 shapes and we expanded to 26 shapes in 3 different sizes, because we also found with the small size, when you get to the 12 and up ages, and especially adults, they want something a little bit bigger to work on. So we started doing the kits about 2 years later and started doing trade shows. That's when it really became a thing for us. It went from a side hustle to, okay, this is something,
something
people
there,
are liking this. We had really positive feedback and interest in our product.
Every show we did was always great feedback. So.
We made sure our kits were complete. That's a big thing. Yeah. We're parents now. We know what it's like. If you get a kit for a trial, then you're missing something. It's frustrating. You have to go find the pieces. So we made sure our kits were complete from the very beginning.
So what's in a kit typically?
So you get 1 soapstone shape, 3 stages of sandpaper. If it's our medium and large kits, you'll get a carving rasp, just because the larger kits, there's a lot more stone to take away. So you need that fancy tool in there to help you with that. And then the finishing oil, which is what brings the magic out, everybody's favorite part. It's what brings that natural color out of the stone. And then we also provide instructions in the kit on how to get started.
Right. And we are talking stone here, but you mentioned sandpaper. Is it really that soft that you can shape it with sandpaper?
It really is.
Really?
Yeah. Just use a coarser grit to start with to do your primary shaping.
Right.
And then you get into finer grits to smooth it all out and then really kind of put that final finishing texture on that stone.
And you mentioned the color. I found that, to be honest with you, quite fascinating, because I was taking a look at some of the pictures on your website. And when you see the product come in from overseas, I mean, they're just big boulders that you'd find in a quarry. They're like grays and beiges and not anything looking special.
Yeah. Plain and unassuming. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So is it the oil that you put on it that brings out those amazing colors?
It definitely helps.
Okay.
With the stone also sitting out in nature, it kind of gets almost like a little bit of a rind on it as well, where the outside gets kind of oxidized, and it kind of blinds you from the real color and the real texture that you kind of see inside that stone. And then by sanding it, I often refer to stone carving as having a picture that's out of focus. And once we start to smooth it and get that glassy finish on it, that's when you actually start to bring out those natural colors and the natural patterns in the stone into a clear picture for you to see.
Oh, okay. When you said that, it reminded me of that story that I heard of Michelangelo when he was carving the statue of David. He worked on it for I don't know how long. It was a very long time. And there was this young boy that used to come and watch him, watch this great master artist work. And then one day when the statue of David was there for the world to see, the little boy looked up to Michelangelo and said, "How did you know that he was in there?"
Yeah.
And do you find that as carvers yourselves, as you'll take a smaller piece of rock and it'll kind of tell you what it wants to be?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah. Especially,
absolutely.
I mean, it comes in such raw forms. You just look at a piece and you're like, oh, I know that's meant to be a whale, just the way it's naturally formed. It's a little harder in a block of stone, but if you have the vision, this is what I really like to carve, you'll see it in there before you carve it, for sure.
Raw chunks can really inspire a certain image or a certain shape from certain angles, right? So that's kind of the fun of it. You can change the angles and see different possibilities in that rock as well.
Is there any way for the two of you to determine or get a pretty good idea of what rock is going to look outstanding or what the colors are going to be? Or really, without divulging any trade secrets?
Working with it for so long, you kind of see the little nuances in the stone themselves.
Okay.
Especially once we've cut a side open. One of our favorite things is using rubbing alcohol to spray the surface of the stone once we've cut it. And the rubbing alcohol will kind of bring out the color of that stone. But as it evaporates, if there's any minute fractures or cracks or seams that are maybe not solid, they're the last to evaporate. So it actually shows us any weak spots on that rock as well.
Right.
And it's an easier way for us to kind of help control some of the loss that we get through breakage and stuff like that, just to make sure we're giving out more solid product in the long run.
Where are you getting most of your rock from?
It all comes from Brazil. Yeah, that's the only stuff we use. It's one of the softest. So for us, that's really important because we really like to say our kits are great for ages 5 and up. So if we use any of the harder stones, it would be way too hard, especially for like the elementary age students.
Okay.
And we just love Brazilian. Its color range is phenomenal.
Is amazing.
And it's not one batch is ever like the last, right? Yeah. It's always a different color. We've never gotten a shipment later that looked anything like any rocks in the previous shipments before. So,
and we've gone through 500,000 pounds now. So
really?
A lot. Oh yeah.
500,000 pounds. Over what time period would that be?
Since about 2005, in 20 years.
Not even
17.
Yeah, about 17. Yeah. 15, 17, something like that.
Yeah.
Time flies. I hate to say it, but
it does.
I'm not very punctual on time frames. I don't really recognize time slots that well.
One of the things is I love when that happens is basically it's your customers that prompt a new product line or an expansion, because you said you started out with 6 and it grew basically out of requests, right?
Yep. Oh, yeah. Even our shapes. We've discontinued a lot and introduced new ones just based on, okay, we see a high failure rate on this one. We're going to discontinue it. But then we have enough requests for a certain shape. We'll add it in, test out the market. If it sells, we'll keep it on there. And then we also do a lot of custom cutting for people. They will buy one of our kits, say a bear, and then, they want to try an elephant. Or, they'll send us a silhouette of a logo. Done lots of that.
Just very cool.
Cutting Sasquatches, there's been a popular one. Things like that. People just say, okay, now can you do this? So we try. Yeah.
Wow. Because it could be a potential corporate reward or almost logo or some kind of appreciation.
Yeah.
Acknowledgement thing.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that would be such a unique gift. Very cool. You also mentioned that things started to really ramp up. Was that the markets that caused that?
I mean, it was both. We do teachers conventions, which are, the teachers' version of a trade show.
Yeah.
So that's where just teachers go to check out field trip options. And I mean, there's also jewelry and stuff at those conventions, but it's a big place for anyone like us to go that are ready to come into the school and teach. That's where they find people like us, is at those conventions. So we were doing those. But the retail trade shows, that's what really took off our kits. We were a bit afraid to dive in. Those can get quite expensive. And,
yeah, for sure.
We were hesitant. So my sister had been doing them for years with her jewelry booth. So she said, okay, well, why don't you just set up a shelf in my booth and let's test it out. So we did. But the only problem with that is our shelf was so busy, no one could see her jewelry. Like, plugged her booth up for Soapstone sales. So it was tragic and funny at the same time. We laugh about it now because that was the show that was like, okay, this is fun. This was a blast. Let's try a big one on our own with our own booths.
So that gave you proof of concept.
Yeah.
At her expense.
Yeah.
The teachers' conventions were great because the teachers also talk with each other. So it was a great way for our name to also get out in classrooms as well.
Yeah.
And, students want more, teachers want more, parents want more. So it was also a great way for us to expand as well.
And I would imagine to be able to connect with them too, as far as product line expansions, what's working, what's not, what could we do better?
Absolutely.
And it's also a great lesson on going to where your ideal client is, those conventions.
Exactly.
Yeah. So what percentage would you say would be like retail sales versus like within the school system?
That's a good question.
I would say at this point, well, I mean, we have so many different avenues.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll say like the teaching that we ourselves do is probably actually only about 30% now. But we do sell to other companies like us that use our kits in school system all over Canada. So, and that's another at least 40% of our business is the other companies teaching with our kits.
Let's talk about that for a minute, because that could be a great side hustle for someone listening that wants to basically go into the schools and do what you're doing.
Yep.
Is it the school district then that they get paid by? Like, how does that work?
Primarily, it's like the district, but then it's also
it's the
Catholic
board.
Schools are different. Yeah, it's all kind of about the board, right? So Catholic school board's a different one. Then you get like the elementary ones and stuff like that. So it does vary a little bit in between, but there's typically one kind of group responsible for coordinating what those students get to do.
Right.
And then they also pretty much allocate the funding for that as well.
Okay. Can you give me an idea of the profit margin?
Pretty good.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, actually, since COVID, it's been a lot harder. Our costs went up ×3
considerably.
Which was a lot.
Yeah.
So profit margins this last 2 years is probably only about 30% right now, but the prices are going down. We have more stone coming in, and it's not the product itself, it's the logistics, the freight. We just couldn't even believe it. It was so high. We debated taking a year off because we really did not make what we needed to make off that shipment, but we wanted to keep going because we didn't want that to be the thing that slowed us down. Yeah. So we have taken some losses this last 2 years, but this 2023 has been amazing. So we've really popped back up.
Nice. What could somebody expect to earn if they wanted to do this as a side hustle and to basically take your product and go into either, I'm thinking the school system and or being able to offer it to people locally? Because to be honest with you, I think this would be like super fun to have a group of 10 or 20 friends over and do this kind of as a party.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Potluck carving
host a
nights
lot
are
of groups
great.
like that. Yeah, and we ourselves do it. We invite friends over all the time, and we do a lot of shows, so our samples get broken. So we just have friends and family come over to help.
Broken or sold, yeah. Constantly working on something.
Perfect.
If you can try and find a way where it matches curriculum in the school base, because we can follow into Canadian social studies.
Okay.
And with the art, there's more than one avenue that we can go into the school system that they can provide or find funding for us to come into. And the more avenues that you can find for your product to be incorporated in a schooling system,
right,
the more money you're going to make. Because like here in Edmonton area, there's over 1,000 schools around here.
Wow.
You know, and you think,
yeah,
over 1,000 schools in just a smaller area.
Yeah.
You know, if you're working in that small area, you're going to do pretty well if you're getting into 30% of those schools, and you take that nationwide.
Right.
And then we're also in North America as well. We sell to schools in the United States as well. So not just here in Canada. So
yeah. And I noticed that you do some online teaching as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So that you do have the ability to do that. You don't have to have somebody physically at the front of the classroom.
Correct. We've done a bunch of YouTube videos as well to help with that as well, because now with the classrooms, you know, everything's updated in new wave. There's no chalkboards in a classroom anymore. It's all a big smart board. It's easier for a teacher to put up a video.
Right.
Where, you know, our videos for the classroom can be an hour and a half, 2 hours long. They can sit there, put it up, pause it, rewind it if they need to. It just makes it so much easier for a teacher to incorporate us into a classroom. And that really helps.
And given your experience at it now too, would be quite easy, I would imagine, for you to field questions and know the kind of questions that are coming up.
Yeah, it's pretty good. Yeah, I like it. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah. Very cool.
We didn't think we could do Zoom, soapstone carving via Zoom until COVID. And we just had to be like everybody else, like, how do we make this work? And that's life of the hustle, right? You gotta this is the next thing we have to adapt to, and it's just constant. And if you can keep up with those, if you can adapt constantly, then you'll do okay in these situations.
Or at least recognize when you have to adapt.
Zoom's been amazing on Zoom. And teachers, there's so many teachers in remote areas that haven't had access to field trips like these before. So it's been pretty big for communities like that.
Right. That they can get access to this. You just ship them up the product. And then they take it from there.
Exactly.
Yeah. And that changing, as you mentioned, I was thinking about that because I believe you mentioned it was your grandfather that started the Bedrock store in 1973, something like that.
1972.
Yeah. And I was looking at the various tabs on the website, and one went to an Etsy store. And I'm thinking, okay, that sure wasn't there when your grandfather started it.
Nope. No.
So it's that ability to change and adapt as things change.
Yes. Yeah. Because it's constantly, I mean, in business, especially retail, you know, it's a roller coaster.
Yeah.
So you just have to be on it. And fortunately, we have a really good team around us. Like, you know, all the family members, we all do something on the side. That 2019, we actually all finally merged together to put all our power in one spot. So we merged all our businesses and we're running them all together now. Because we have 5 different hustles going on that we've made one big hustle now. And it does make it a little easier because we all have different levels of expertise in different things. So it's just nice having that extra person there that can see it from a different point of view sometimes and help you when you're in a rut or
just knows what you're doing and is able to take the stuff that you're doing if you're not unavailable to continue working, knowing that branch as well.
Right.
You know, we've all developed a lot of knowledge in our areas together. So we know a lot of our own side hustles, right? So we can all work together really well.
Nice. And work off each other's strengths. And, you know, if you want to get away for a week or two, you can.
And self-critique as well. If we're doing something and sister-in-law sees something that maybe this is a different kind of a way to think about going about this, right? There's different ideas that are going into the work as well. which kind of helps us grow and helps us evolve to try and be better at what we're doing.
Yeah. And have you set up some kind of a structure or understanding to make that work? Because sometimes you get family members together in a business and it doesn't go so well.
So it's really odd how well it works for us. But I think it's because, none of us have really big egos. Egos is really usually something that gets in the way. I think we all kind of understand we know all of our places, right?
We're all a team, that, right?
David's just amazing here and I'm amazing here. And Robin, my sister, is amazing here. My brother, my mom, we all kind of pick our spots and then we come to each other for help when we need it. But we're pretty good at not really stepping on each other's feet.
Yeah.
We get lots of comments. We teach a lot of classes in the building and people are just like, wow, I cannot imagine working with my brother or my sister, my mom. Even my dad now, he's been helping us out because we're building a lot of tools these days. And so there's just so many of us. I don't know how it works, but it does.
As I was looking, it seems like you've got a lot going on now. What are the different income sources that you have now, above and beyond, say, selling the kits or teaching in schools?
Aside from that, we have a studio just behind our retail storefront where we teach a lot of classes. A lot of it's silversmithing, glass bead making, and soapstone carving. And then we do basic beading courses and stuff like that. But I think our next biggest revenue source is our traveling jewelry classroom. So my sister, she's been teaching jewelry classes for about 18 years.
Yeah.
We both kind of were at that same point of wanting to make more money. So she went off and started teaching a lot. So now we either pack pallets or we fill my truck up and we drive all over Vancouver, Saskatchewan, Ontario, Philadelphia, Tucson. We take that classroom with us. We do a week's worth of classes, morning and night, and we teach and then we bring it all home. So we're gone about once a month teaching those jewelry classes. So that's kind of, we've got our soapstone, but that's number 2 right there, really helping us along. And it's a lot of fun.
Is that into schools or private sector?
No, so those are, I'd have to say, like, it's private.
Mm-hmm.
They're kind of like retail trade shows, but with classes. So you'll have your vendor booths full of beading supplies and jewelry supplies, but then behind there'll be about 10 to 15 classrooms with 10 to 15 different teachers. Most are either from the US or Canada, but some are international. There used to be a big one in Milwaukee, and it was teachers from all over the world that would come, and it was all jewelry related.
Right. Okay.
All crafts like that. So pretty neat.
Yeah. Well, what's been the biggest challenge in growing Rubble Road?
The logistics of shipping and importing is probably one of our biggest logistics here. Cutting, we've got it down to a pretty sweet science right now. We've got a great line of how we get things going from boulder to a kit. So I'd say that's probably one of the biggest things. It's just making sure it gets here in a timely fashion. We've done orders where, we thought we'd have it in 3 months. 15 years ago, you order it, within 2 months, you had it. Not always the case now. Sometimes we waited, 5-6 months for something to come up. And that's a little bit longer than I care to wait.
And you can't predict that. There's nothing you can do. And it's extremely frustrating when there's nothing that you can do. You can just wait.
Yeah.
Right.
But everything else, I think we started so slow. We really took our time. And I think that's big if you can do that. When you're starting a side hustle, we took our time. So when it came to the production of our product, us taking that time and doing it slowly really helped us perfect that area. It's just the areas we can't control can be a little much sometimes. The dollar, most products are bought in US dollars, and that's constantly fluctuating for us. So I remember the on par days, and those were great days.
Those were great days.
But we haven't seen that in a long time.
And you are an artist yourself, Jennifer, doing stone artist commission pieces?
Stone sculptures, yeah. David and I both.
You both do it.
I bring along to the shows. It's both of our work. We have 2 different styles, but we carve. We try to keep the theme the same in the animals that we do carve, and we just carve them slightly differently. And that's kind of a newer thing. We've both been carving for a long time, but I think now we're both at that point where we're really liking the style we've found for ourselves, and it really adds to our booth just to have people see what you can do if you do enough carving. And then that's just a nice side thing to keep us busy. It's kind of that de-stress. You'd think after cutting stone all day, you wouldn't want to go home and carve stone, but it's completely different process. It's a lot more creative than cutting kits on a saw.
Yeah.
And
I do some hard rock carving as well for her sister, who's a jeweler. So I do some harder stone work as well. Okay. Which is fun. I enjoy it.
Well, it really speaks to your passion for the industry that in your time off, you're still doing it.
Yes. True.
Well, what are your plans for the future of Rubble Road?
Well, I think I do want to expand. We've been focusing a lot on getting our kits in the U.S. school systems. We've gotten more and more American contracts, which is really nice. We just want to spread out further.
Yeah.
Up our videos, so it's a little bit more user-friendly as well.
We want to increase our YouTube channel. Have a lot more carving videos, tips and tricks. That's just the one thing we just haven't had as much time to do is our YouTube channel. That's a big one for us, though. We really want to grow that.
Yeah. And when people are working with the stone, are you wearing masks?
Well, when we carve in classroom settings, we have everyone carving in a few inches of water. When you carve in water, the dust, it's a heavy dust. It sinks to the bottom and it's not in the air at all. But when we're power carving or we're working on the saw, we do wear masks. Yeah.
Okay. But what a fantastic thing for the kids to be exposed to at a young age.
It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun.
Well, I can attest to how, I guess, easy and fun it is to work with your kits, because at that trade show, I ended up picking up a few of them for little kiddos in my life, and they absolutely loved them.
Awesome.
Fantastic.
Yeah, and they're like 3 different ages 2, 4, 6. So you saw the difference in them, but they all totally got into it.
Nice. It's amazing.
Fun. So that's the fun thing about like even a 2-year-old playing with it. You know, they're just so happy to. It's very textural. Very good for fine motor skill development, even if they don't do a lot of carving to the piece. Just that, you know, even 20 minutes that they work with it is mesmerizing to them.
Yeah, because they see the change in it. And my only regret is that I did not grab a kit for myself. So I'm going to have to fix that for the future. Well, what's the best way for our listeners to connect with you?
Any of the social media platforms, we're on it. Email is always best, but we are on Instagram and Facebook and TikTok. I check all of those daily. So anything you have access to when it comes to the social medias, we're on it.
Are they shown on a website somewhere like
rubble-road.com? We have a contact form on there.
Okay,
we also have our Instagram site, which is just Rubble Road Soapstone. Our TikTok is also just Rubble Road Soapstone. And our Facebook is Rubble Road Soapstone Kits.
Perfect. And at one point, of course, Rubble Road was just a single thought, but you acted on it, you've grown the business. What's your best tip to inspire others to pursue their side hustle dream?
Be persistent. You know, it's going to take some dedication. Everybody's like, oh, it's just great. Working for yourself is great. But when you're working for yourself, there's nobody there to cover for you when you need a day off or when you want a day off in the early days. So, you know, it's going to take some extra effort, definitely earlier on. I would definitely say it's definitely been worth it for myself. Having our own side hustle has allowed us to do a lot of things as a family, which I know a lot of my other friends don't get to do as much because they're in other jobs that are more constrictive and eat a lot more of their time. So it's been great that way. But be persistent and be open to change as well within your ideas. Try something. If it doesn't work so great, try something else. Trial and error is a great way to learn. Just make sure you're learning from your mistake.
That's right.
Accept criticism. That's a big one. Ask your family and friends for honest opinions on certain aspects.
Nothing wrong with critiques.
That's helped us a lot, just with packaging and our shapes, and
even just my banter in a classroom as well. A little bit of critiquing there. Getting rid of this conversation, start up a different one, right? So there's always ways to learn.
Well, that's such a diverse skill set that you need between the buying and the packaging and then the front of the classroom delivery. There's a lot to it.
I guess also, don't be afraid to ask questions. That's a big one. Just ask everyone you know about everything. Like, we have so many friends in so many different areas of work. None of them are in the arts, but they've all had something important, some sort of important advice that they've helped us with along the way. So you may not think they might not be useful if they're a machinist, but they will be.
I couldn't agree more. I've often said that I can learn something from everyone I meet.
Yeah.
It's just so true.
You have to be willing to ask.
Yeah.
For sure.
Willing to hear too, right?
Yeah.
Doesn't necessarily need somebody older or more mature. Like you can learn something from people of all ages if you're willing to listen.
Absolutely. Of all ages. I think that's really the key. Well, thank you so much, Jennifer, David, for sharing your side hustle journey and for being today's Side Hustle Heroes.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, it's a pleasure being here. Thank you very much.
David and Jennifer talked about the value of being willing to ask questions. It's so helpful to be curious. I've known for a long time now that I can learn something from everyone I meet, regardless of their profession or position in life. In fact, it can be really helpful to seek out conversations with people who are outside of your industry and normal circle of friends, because it can help enhance your creativity and expand your thinking. One of the things that prevented me from asking questions in the early days of my career is that I had this belief that I needed to know everything. So of course I wasn't going to be asking questions. As a 22-year-old bank manager, I learned a lot from watching and listening to those people around me that I wanted to emulate. But I could have learned so much more if I had been willing to put myself out there, speak up, and ask questions. There was one person back then, Cornelius, who I wrote about in my book, The Way Success Works. He was my boss at the time, and he was a master at getting things done. He had time management down to an art. And while I did learn a lot from observing him, I could have learned so much more if I could have mustered up the courage to ask him questions and seek his advice. Like, what do you do in this situation? Or how would you juggle this? Or how do you balance work life and family life? My inability to do that stemmed from feeling insecure and lacking a certain level of confidence. Years later, when I realized the opportunity I had missed, I vowed never to let that happen again. And today, as you may have guessed, I love asking people questions and learning, and I hope you do too. It can certainly open doors to great opportunities. Well, that's a wrap for today. You'll find a link to the Rubble Road website and social media links on our website, sidehustlehero.com. If you enjoyed this episode, let me know that you're listening and tell me how this podcast is helping you. You can tag me or send a DM on Instagram at Joan Posivy. Thanks for listening, and hustle on.